I'm getting more and more less confident about it. They seem to be delaying, and I think that's a shame. But I'm less confident now than I would have been a couple of months ago. Something happened to them, but I am much less confident of a deal being made.
That was President Trump on the new Pod Force One from the New York Post, a new podcast that they have, and that was apparently the inaugural cast that was made. I think the video was made last night. It was released this morning as the first in their line. But that's a pretty big issue that's at stake here, because President Trump is saying, I'm losing confidence that we're going to be able to get this done. Well, I think that President Trump has painted himself into a corner to where either he gets the deal that he's claiming to everybody that he actually wants, or he could be putting himself into a place to where the only option left is kinetic, to where he would then attack Iran. And I listen, I just got to say, I've mentioned this before, but it is so crucial that it must be repeated here. The President of the United States does not have the statutory authorization to just attack another country because he doesn't like how they're doing things. Even if you say, yeah, but we don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. Who's to blame? Who's to argue with that? That's a good thing to not want to happen. But there is nothing in the American law or the U.S. Constitution which allows the chief executive to unilaterally attack another country. That is exclusively in Article 1 of the Constitution reserved for the United States Congress. The U.S. law, the 1973 War Powers Act, expressly states that only if America is attacked or our armed forces, only then can the commander-in-chief act without constitutional or congressional authority. Otherwise, he has to have explicit prior permission from Congress, like through an AUMF or from a declaration of war. So it is so unfortunate and I think dangerous that we're at the point to now where almost no one is even raising this as an issue to say this is unconstitutional, that he can't just attack Iran because he doesn't want them to have nuclear weapons. And of course, the irony is that Iran has said we don't have nuclear weapons. We don't have a nuclear weapons program. Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, the Director of National Intelligence, earlier this year went before Congress and said we have no evidence that they have started a nuclear weapons program. The only thing she has said, and many others accurately do say, is that their capacity has expanded. Their nuclear reprocessing potential has expanded and is now up to the point of, I think it's 60% reprocessing grade, which is just apparently one technical step away from the 90%, which would allow them to produce fissile material, et cetera. So they haven't done it yet. And so we're talking about the possibility of attacking another country to prevent them from having a nuclear weapon that they don't have. So not only is it not smart, not only is it against the U.S. law and against the U.S. Constitution, it's also practically unnecessary. Now, we have to be honest and see, where is the impetus for this coming from? There's only one source, folks. Iran does not threaten the United States. Israel has chosen to say that Iran threatens them. And of course, there's this constant recitation about how Israel has for decades said death to America, death to Israel. We want to wipe Israel off the map and all that. Those are words they have definitely said, and there's no question about that. But that's also, we have to understand what they intend with that. That's rhetoric where they say that they don't like Israel, because Israel has attacked Iran many, many times. They have for decades assassinated key leaders, assassinated scientists, blown up their embassies in other countries, assassinated people in their capital city during an inauguration, etc. The Israeli side has been very, very provocative against Iran, much more so than whatever they've gotten in return. Now, that's an issue between Israel and Iran. If they want to do that, I don't think they should, but that's not my call to make. That's not America's call to make. Every country must do whatever it thinks it needs to do for its national security and be prepared to face the consequences for whatever course of action they choose. And if Israel wants to go down a path that I think is foolish, that's their prerogative. They're a sovereign country and they can do that. But we should not underwrite it. And under no circumstances should the United States of America give its armed forces for the use by the Israeli government to take action that exclusively is something that they want to accomplish. Point blank, let me be clear on this. Iran is not a threat to the United States that we can't handle with our normal global security posture. They are not going to attack us. They know that to do so would be a suicidal invitation to destruction. Therefore, they won't do it. Every action that they have taken, no matter how much you may hate them, since 1979, has been to try and have regime survival. They want to prevent all these attacks that they've been getting against them and their own enemies in the region, but it's always been calculated to preserve their regime. That is more important than anything else. They've had opportunities. United States ourselves, President Trump in particular in his first term, assassinated their version of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, a guy named General Soleimani, in I think it was early 2020, January 2020. And he assassinated their leader, and in response, they took a very passive response. They shot some missiles at one of our Iraqi air bases, but they did so. It was very clear, measured way that they didn't want it to escalate beyond that, but they felt that they had to do something in response. That's what they did. Similar to what Iran did twice in 2024 with Israel. They responded to a lot of the attacks they had, but in a measured way because they don't want to escalate. A country that doesn't want to escalate, that by our own accounts has not made the decision to go to a nuclear weapon, is not a threat to us because they recognize the power. So we need to just avoid this situation altogether. But President Trump, as you saw in that opening comment there from just last night, released this morning, is that he said, I'm running out of patience. Well, he said also that things have changed in the last 2 months. He specifically said things are different now than they were then. I'm not as optimistic and confident as I was. Well, let's look back at that, because there has been some pretty wild gyrations in where the United States was at all and where Trump even was on this. First of all, let's go back to Trump himself. He says he's losing confidence. Well, he didn't have any 3 months ago. So on March the 7th of this year from the Oval Office, he gave this stark warning.
You know, we're down to final strokes with Iran. That's going to be an interesting time. And we'll see what happens. But we're down to the final moments. We're at final moments. You can't let them have a nuclear weapon. It's an interesting time in the history of the world. But we have a situation with Iran that something's going to happen very soon. Very, very soon. You'll be talking about that pretty soon, I guess. And hopefully we can have a peace deal. You know, I'm not speaking out of strength or weakness. I'm just saying I'd rather see a peace deal than the other. But the other will solve the problem.
Yeah, the other won't solve the problem. Now, it turns out, at least it's been reported by the New York Times around that same time, that a number of Trump's senior advisors, one was rumored to be Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, and explained to him what the consequences would be for a war with Iran, and that they would be far, far worse for the United States than anything that currently existed. So our situation would be worsened, not improved, if we took kinetic action in there. Now, I don't know. I don't have any insider information whether Tulsi said that or not. The New York Times reported it, and then Trump significantly changed his tone after that. And then his one of his personal chief diplomats, Steve Witkoff, that he uses for both the Middle Eastern issues as well as the Russia-Ukraine war, went to talk with some Tehran representatives and came back talking pretty optimistic. And on 14 April, he went on Hannity and said this.
The president's message of peace through strength, it resonates throughout the world. This is not a threat on my part now. It is just a simple fact. The president means what he says, which is they cannot have a bomb. The conversation with the Iranians will be much about two critical points. One, enrichment. As you mentioned, they do not need to enrich past 3.67%. In some circumstances, they're at 60%. In other circumstances, 20%. That cannot be. And you do not need to run, as they claim, a civil nuclear program where you're enriching past 3.67%.
Okay, if the story had stopped right there, I think the chances would be good that Trump could get a negotiated settlement, because the Iranians do not want to conflict. They do not want a conflict either with Israel or the United States. They are aware of their weakness in defense capabilities And even though they do have some significant missile capabilities, they understand that they don't have enough missiles to maintain a sustained rate of fire so that they can get into a long fight with the United States. They can do some damage, they can cause a lot of trouble, but for a period of time. They don't want to find out because they don't have the manufacturing capacity like, say, the Russians or the Chinese do to carry this on for a number of years. They have some significant limitations in that, and I'm sure that those factories would be one of the first targets the United States or Israel would launch if they went into a war with Iran. So they don't want to fight with us. That's also crucial to understand, and they're willing to do whatever it takes, even against their desires and their preferences, if it's going to keep war off the table. The Iranian side has been signaling that they're willing to compromise on a number of things, to include reprocessing capacity. But they have said point blank, they're not going to get to zero. They're not going to go down that path, because to do so, and what was reported as has been put forward to the Iranian side, is that they have to get rid of all their long-range missile capacity, anything that even potentially could carry a nuclear warhead, and all the reprocessing facilities, intrusive inspections, Americans part of the group that would do that, etc. Those are very, very intrusive. And if you're going to ask for that much from Iran, you're going to have to give something to Iran. Nobody is going to negotiate and just say you can do whatever you want and we'll just surrender and de-arm. Because if they got rid of all of their long-range missiles, and if they got rid of even the possibility of reprocessing nuclear fuel, then they are effectively disarmed. So now then they can't even say, if you press us enough, then we'll launch a nuclear weapons program, which they have said in recent months. They have said, if you press us too hard, then we will start one, even though we don't want to, out of sheer desperation, because they would then view that as the only way that they can defend themselves. So far, they haven't done that, but they have said that they're not going to go to 0% reprocessing. Well, there was many people that even in the administration and a lot of the Trump supporters that were really upset at Witkoff on that 14 April event when he went on Hannity there. And the next month, actually before that, but the next month, he made this comment here about where he changed the conditions.
The president has been very clear. He wants to solve this conflict diplomatically and with dialogue. And he's given all the signals. He's directly sent letters to the supreme leader. I have been dispatched to deliver that message as well, and I've delivered it. But on the other hand, we have one very, very clear red line, and that is enrichment. We cannot allow even 1% of an enrichment capability.
So you see, in April, Witkoff said, you don't need more than 3.67%. But now then, because the Israeli government reportedly just went crazy about that, said, no, 0%. They want zero. And I suspect, though I can't prove this, that some of the Israeli side want to have that to 0% because they know that Iran is not going to agree to it. You have to understand that Israel, it's not even been hidden. They are absolutely obsessed with attacking Iran. They have been trying to do it for a long, long time. And especially, even going back about a year ago, we've shown you some clips in the past and did some over last year where former Prime Minister Naftali Bennett, said this is a once in a 50-year opportunity. We've got to destroy the head of the octopus and all this kind of stuff. And so they have never wanted to stop with any of that. They have never wanted to do anything besides their maximalist objectives, and they have been doing everything to try to draw the United States into the fight themselves. And it's just not in our interest to do so. And so you see, though, that the pressure did work, because then Witkoff went from 3.67% to a red line, which is about the strongest language you can have, of 0%. Well, the Iranians, and this is in the New York Times, I believe this was 2 days ago, Iran rejects plan to stop it from enriching uranium. They have said, no, we're going to continue to do that. They're just asking for things that you can't do, Mr. Trump said of Iran. But the Iranian officials are saying, no, this is just something we've got to do. Then here's the thing. They've said there's plenty of things that they will do. They said that they're willing to negotiate, but you can't enter into a negotiation with zero-sum situation where, no, that it's not a negotiation if what you're telling them is, here are all the terms, either accept it or it's war. That's called an ultimatum. That's not a negotiation. If you want to negotiate, they're willing to give in on some of the things. They're willing to take issues that are to their disadvantage, but not everything. That's what negotiations are. If Trump has backed himself into a corner from whatever source this pressure may have come from, whether within his administration, other friends of Israel, or Israel government itself, I can't say. I don't have any access to that. But we can see that some kind of pressure is coming from somewhere because Trump keeps changing his mind. He keeps moving the goalpost. And now he's set one from which he's either going to have to back down and be seen as not taking his, being strong enough, or he's going to have to act against the Constitution and against the U.S. law and possibly drag us into war. That is where we're at here. And by setting a red line, a demonstrative, declaratory statement that either there is 0% enrichment, the one thing that Iran has said it's not going to give in on, along with its, I think the ballistic missiles are another thing that they said they're not going to get rid of those, especially the long-range ones, because that's one of their most effective self-defense weapons that they have. So if you said it's a red line, something that the other side can't give into, then you're either going to have to go to war or back down. And Trump, he has sometimes he has backed down, or he'll just declare that, no, that's not what I said, or I meant something different, or, well, all right, I talked to them and they agreed to do this. I don't know what he may do, and I certainly hope he does that. Backing down is the wisest course of action that he can do at this point. Better would have been never to make that declaratory statement about a red line. Much better would have been to take the negotiated win. Because, look, many people were going to already accuse him, and I'm talking about some of his most ardent supporters on the right in the United States, both at Fox News and several others on their X post, were just excoriating the president for even thinking about not having a maximalist objectives imposed upon the Iranians, and said, no, don't allow them to have any reprocessing capacity. Don't allow them to have any long-range ballistic missiles, which virtually guarantees a war. And these people, by the way, who say this, you know what they won't be doing? Well, they'll be cheerleading, but they won't be on the front line. They won't be in planes that are going to be flying into enemy territory. They won't be taking any risk with any ships in the region that could be attacked. They won't be taking any personal risk at all. They're cool. Negotiated solution, and Trump doesn't back down and does violate the Constitution and take us to war, there will be Americans killed. Guaranteed that. Iran has been explicit in saying, we don't want war. We definitely won't start one. But if you do, then we know where all of your troops are in the Middle East. We see them all. We know exactly where they're at. We know where their weaknesses are. We know where their air defenses can't handle some of the missiles that we could bring to bear. And they're right. There are definitely those. They could kill Americans there, not just these militias. But if you get into a war with Iran where they no longer have any reason to restrain themselves, they can inflict a great deal of damage on us. And that means lost service members. That means they could even potentially shoot down some of our long-range bombers. We have a bunch of combat power at Diego Garcia with long-range bombers. We still have an aircraft carrier group, at least one strike group in the region that's within range. And all of those would become targets. So it is not cost-free, and it could be crippling to us, depending on how things work out there. Because, and we've talked about this a number of times, but it also bears repeating that, thanks, Gary, for putting that one up there right now. That's one of the Iranian officials, the Iranian defense minister, actually talking about what they would do if this doesn't work out. So don't put them to the test to find out. There's no reason to sacrifice American service members for the benefit of another country. I don't care how friendly we are with Israel. It is not worth the life of a single American trooper, not one. And especially the loss of our platforms as well, which diminishes our overall national security. You can't take out those kinds of assets, whether you're talking about aircraft carrier, or naval ships, or any of those things that could go wrong, the long-range bombers, etc. We don't need to be finding this out, folks. This is not in America's interest. And for the life of me, I just don't understand why Trump has gone so far down this road on something that is so clearly not in our interest. Forget about advantage. just maintain a normal defense posture in the region takes care of our needs right there, and gives any kind of deterrent that Iran needs to not launch a preemptive attack. And they've had so many opportunities over all these years since 1979. They haven't launched a nuclear weapons program. They've toyed around with one for a while, but since 2003, they have done none of that. They've not gone any further with that. And they've had every opportunity. So those who claim, like what's his face, General Jack Keane, he has claimed several times that if we don't do this, I'm talking in just recent days, if we don't knock them out here, then they're going to be able to launch this nuclear weapons program, oblivious to the fact that they've had every opportunity and haven't. There's a reason that they haven't, and it's not because of any sanctions or anything else. It's because of a political decision in Tehran. Don't make them change the calculations and giving them reason to make that political decision. And, like Gary's showing there on the screen, you've got Russia and China now have a much more vested interest in making sure the Iranian regime remains in power. So they're not just going to turn a blind eye to this if Israel and the United States try to have a regime change, which is apparently what the Israeli sides want. I don't know why they think it's going to work when it's been disastrous every other time we've tried it. Remember, it was a regime change operation that we snatched with a coup in 1953 that led to the arrival of the Islamic regime. That's what spawned the 1979 revolution from the horrible person that we put in charge with the Shah of Iran, that led to the revolution, which now started this that we've been living with the consequences since 1979. What a great role model that is for us to try and correct again by the same terms that were so disastrous the first time. Bottom line here, folks, we don't need to go down this path. Everything is negative for us, diplomatically, economically, militarily. Our relations with China and Russia, which are already strained, of course, this could just make it exacerbate it, make it worse. Don't do this. Take the win, change the terms, back down, whatever you need to do, put whatever face you need to on it. Say, I changed my mind, or I just reinterpret it. At this point, it doesn't matter. Is the worst possible outcome would be to say, well, I said there was a red line, so now I have to meet up to it. If that will guarantee harm our interests and result in dead Americans, do not do it. Don't take the bait. Don't listen to these people who are trying to push you in an area that will be bad for you in terms of your own administration, bad for America, bad for the U.S. Armed Forces, and bad for all the people living in the region as well. Let's not forget about them too, because a lot of people would die if we go on this unnecessarily. And again, if Israel wants to take something, they can do that on their own without our help and without our ammunition. We should make that a caveat that you're not going to do that. I'd love to see somebody finally stand up and say, this is for American national interest. You are our friend, but this is where the line stops. I mean, I could go on down the whole Gaza situation. We'll do that in a future video, but I'm talking about right now just the Iranian situation. That's what the United States could do to stay out of trouble. At this point, as we're speaking right now, we can still avoid the worst outcomes. I pray that we end up taking that path, but we'll wait and see. All right, that's what we got for you right now. We're going to come back here at 2 p.m. today. We're going to have Russia's front line. I'm going to kind of do a tactical update. Hadn't done that in a little while, and show you something that's been really kind of more than puzzling. It's just been really disappointing and discouraging to me that I see so many in the West and in the United States. I'm going to focus on the U.S. particularly in the show this afternoon, that there is just this bizarre disconnection from reality. And I'm just going to show you, put it on graphic display here. When you see the realities of what's going on the ground and what people are saying, and it's a real head scratcher. We do these kind of things though, because we want to show you that there is a sane way to do this, one that reaches American national security interests and doesn't exacerbate the situation. And then later on this afternoon at 4:00, I'm really excited to have the frontline reporter for Kiev Independent, Francis Farrell. He's going to be on the show. Been really trying to get this for a long time because, we give a lot of the Russian perspective because we like to show you all the aspects of this. And it's been challenging to find somebody from the Ukraine side that's willing to come on the show. We finally have. Really excited to have Francis Farrell on. From what I've seen from some of the stuff that he's produced, he is kind of in the same vein that we are in terms of we telling the truth. He is Ukrainian. He's from Ukraine. He is pro-Ukraine, but he also talks about what's true. And we're really interested to and happy to show you the viewpoint from Ukraine later this afternoon at 4 p.m. Thank you very much, and we'll see you on those shows later today on the Daniel Davis Deep Dive.